Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Rotoworld Football Show. It is Tuesday, April 22nd, 2025. We are only 275 days away from the 2025 NFL Draft.
Amazing.
The draft is finally, mercifully, almost here. We're going to know where players like Ashton Jeanty and Shedeur Sanders are going on Thursday, maybe Friday. In the case of Shedeur, probably Thursday. The draft is almost here, and we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it in the second half of the show with our friend and betting expert, Mr. Drew Dinsick. We're going to take a look, at the more of the betting angles of the draft, which dovetail nicely with the football angles of the draft still. So Drew's going to he's going to talk about guys like Shedeur, like Ashton Jeanty, how betting has changed some of his favorite bets for this year's draft, over-unders on running backs and wide receivers. But that's after Denny and I talk about Tyler Warren yet again, talk about trades yet again. George Pickens, I'm just looking at our show sheet here. Talking about George Pickens, apparently. Might get traded.
We love Pickens.
We love Pickens. We love J-Mo, as he's colloquially known. He could be on the move as well. But first, Denny wanted to talk about someone who's always on the move after his team falls behind, and that move is to the court. Denny, the hardwood, what is on your mind?
All right. I'm not an NBA head, and you guys know this. In fact, I don't think I watched any NBA except for the Washington Wizards Indiana Pacers game I attended back in March.
Brutal.
Tough game. Wizards lost by 60. And I turned on the last 3 minutes of last night's game 2 between the Pistons and the Knicks. And it was horrible. And primarily it was horrible because Jalen Brunson, who I have no strong feelings about. Just
really here. We have a lot of Knicks fans in our audience.
I know. And this is going to be upsetting for them. And I got some pushback online about this, and nothing too bad, but I understand if you like the Knicks fans, the New York crowd seems to love Brunson, and that's awesome. I'm happy for him. I'm happy for them. It's all good. Also, he's annoying. his style of play is the most irritating thing I've ever seen outside of like James Harden.
I was going to say, don't say it's more irritating than the peak of James Harden.
No, right. Peak James Harden, which is just him pump faking and then jumping into somebody and shooting 29 free throws per game.
Also known as the Dwayne Wade.
Yes, also known as the Dwayne Wade. Very just a boring thing. In fact, it shouldn't even be a foul. It shouldn't. If you jump into a guy, you should be thrown out of the game. Forget about enforcing the foul. Get him out. Get him out of the game. Jalen Brunson's only move, his only thing is to go down court, fake pump, wait for someone to get airborne, and to throw his body into them. That's a boring, irritating way to play basketball. And it was a horrible game to watch last night.
It was a horrible game. Horrible game for Knicks fans who appear to be in hell after they almost lost the Pistons in game 1, took control late, then did indeed lose in game 2. Let Detroit steal one at the Garden as that heads back to Detroit. I have one minor complaint about the ongoing spring playoffs. Mine's with the NHL. And listen, I said a few weeks ago, if Rory had missed that putt on the 19th hole in the playoff hole, it would have been an enough moment for me. Like I tried rooting for you, but you're just not a winner. I can't do it anymore.
Right.
The Edmonton Oilers, they're behind 4-0. They come all the way back to tie it at 5-5 with 2 empty net goals, like 20 seconds left.
Wow.
And then immediately surrender the regulation game winner to the Los Angeles Kings. And I like to root for greatness. I like to root for interesting storylines. Connor McDavid's the best player in the world. Canada not having a Stanley Cup since 1993 is an interesting storyline. But if the Oilers get bounced in this first round, especially after that, enough. I tried. You can't do it.
You have no choice but to support Live Golf after that.
Yeah, no choice but to support the LA Kings after this if you can't pull this off. So enough. Get it together. Rory somehow won, even though he choked like 9 different times. Edmonton Oilers, you need to get it together after choking 19 different times. Denny, it's one of the strangest parts about this 2025 NFL draft is that as of Tuesday afternoon, with 48 hours to go, all 32 teams still own their first-round picks. This genuinely unprecedented, very boring, very, very boring. We need chaos. We need action. And ESPN's Peter Schrager, now of ESPN, formerly of NFL Network, formerly of Fox Sports, reports the Browns and Giants are fielding calls from other teams looking to trade in the top 5 picks in the NFL. So first off, I would hope so. I hope teams are at least calling people like, listen, man, we're not going to actually make a trade. Right. You could imagine if we did.
I mean, but it's good to talk on the phone. It's good to get in touch with old friends and other front offices.
Yes, Denny and I like to talk on the phone. More ideas come out when
Yeah.
you're talking on the phone versus texting or emailing. Teams are talking. Is there anyone you would actually like to see trade into the top 5? Maybe for Ashton Jeanty. I was going to say maybe for Shedeur Sanders, but no one's doing that, obviously. Maybe for, I don't know, like a tackle or something. Like, is anyone you actually want to see trade into the top 5, and for anyone in specific this year?
Well, look, I'm going to have to go through my notes on all the tackles in my evaluations before I get into that. But I mean, yeah, it seems like Jeanty is locked into at worst the top 5.
At worst, the top 6, I would say. Still.
Well, I don't know, Pat.
I think the Jag stuff might be more like trying to tempt people. Like, we might do it. We might take him at 5.
Wait a second. The Raiders pick at 6. They're not getting Jeanty there.
If they have their way, the Raiders won't get him. I think the Jaguars are trying to get someone else who wants Jeanty to trade up to 5. It's just my theory. The Jags could take him themselves, of course. This seems just a little too convenient for me that, after all spring, we haven't heard about this. And 3 or 4 days before the draft, like, oh, actually, you know what? The Jaguars might take him, by the way. It kind of seems like they're trying to get like Jerry Jones or someone else to trade, maybe even the Raiders to trade up. And that is more my take on this than the Jaguars themselves actually doing it. And I feel like if they can't get anyone to do it, then Jeanty might actually fall to Vegas at 6. But you disagree?
I mean, I think obviously there are teams that desperately want Ashton Jeanty, who, he comes along at a time when the position of running back is ascendant, right? And coming off Saquon Barkley leading the Eagles to a championship last year after being completely disregarded by the Giants, kind of written off in this era of, analytically driven, running back doesn't really matter sort of football. That's all out the window for now, since Barkley had his big season last year. And Jeanty writes a letter, by the way, last week to an open letter to every team saying, I'll do what Saquon did easily. Like, not easily, that's my word, but I'll do it. Like don't test me. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it to him. That's what as the kids say.
I had to do it to him.
And yeah, that's the one. So I think that there will be teams that will reach for him, and kind of a no matter what situation for Jeanty. I don't think the Raiders are super safe at 6 if that's who they want.
The no matter what for Jeanty coincides with the narrative that it's a draft with a lack of blue chip talent. It's a lack of players that have first round grades. So, screw it. We know it's a devalued position. We know it's a second tier position, but we're just going to get a special player. And, as someone who loves fantasy sports, I like this outlook. I will also say it feels like the true way to approach running back is not to devalue all of them and not pay some of them, but it's to let other teams figure out which ones are actually good. It's like, I'll let the Jaguars figure out if Leonard Fournette's any good. And it turns out he wasn't. And so no one had to give up anything great to get him. Whereas the Panthers, it turns out Christian McCaffrey's actually good, guys.
Yeah, right.
If you notice this, the Titans, turns out Derrick Henry's good. Giants, turns out Saquon Barkley's good, but we're so bad that he doesn't look good. But we know someone else can make him good. And that is my fear for Ashton Jeanty's career outcome, is that the first team isn't going to be the team where he really shines. That'll end up being the second team.
That's interesting.
Someone else swoops in, but I don't know. I like fantasy sports. So
also,
I would draft Ashton Jeanty, but
the Travis Hunter thirst is real as well, and that's what these calls are about as well. And it makes the fantasy angle for Travis Hunter so much more confusing somehow, because now you're talking about teams that are not in the top 5 or top 10 right now, who have not, haven't really been asked about how would you use Travis Hunter? What do you think of him? Right now, everybody's going to let him play at least some offense, because he said he'd rather not play football than to only play one side of the ball. So everybody's going to let him. But the amount of offense is going to vary from spot to spot, right? So if a team like the Cowboys comes in and scoops him up, I don't know what that means for his fantasy value.
Yeah, Travis Hunter said he would rather not even be around football anymore if he were not allowed to play 2 positions. Dallas Cowboys,
not an exaggeration.
I could see the Cowboys doing it, by the way. Jerry, he didn't get to hire Dion. Maybe he could do the next best thing, draft his 2-way Heisman Trophy winner.
Well, they don't make splashes anymore.
No, they don't. Actually.
Jerry doesn't have that dog in him.
That is true. Yeah, he Boy, he has unearned valor for wanting to make splashes. So we might make, and we hired Brian Schottenheimer.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's the opposite of splashes, you know? I mean, it's every time he has a chance, he just doesn't. Like, and also every time there's a big name running back, we link it to the Cowboys, and the Cowboys have never had any interest in any running backs.
Not since 2016. The Indianapolis Colts keep getting linked. Tyler Warren, he's going there in like every single mock draft. Now, what I would call embattled GM Chris Ballard said the team is, quote, seeking an every down tight end. That, speaking of dovetailing, that would dovetail with what Tyler Warren supposedly does. But would this be a career ruiner for Tyler Warren? Showing up at a team that already has a lot of wide receivers. It has an influx front office. It has probably a hot seat head coach. It has a quarterback situation where they're saying both Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones are going to play. Does not strike me as a place where I'd want to be developing if I was at one of the most difficult to develop positions of tight end. How would you feel about Tyler Warren ending up in Indianapolis, Denny?
It would be tough to invest in him fantasy wise. Let's put it that way. I'm trying to put it as kindly as possible because you're either going to have Anthony Richardson, who is like world historic inaccurate, or Daniel Jones, who is deeply inefficient and not great at the check down, but not as bad as Richardson. And you're also going to have a run based Indianapolis offense. It's not a good spot. It's just not. Like, Tyler Warren's probably really good. Does that matter for fantasy in this circumstance? Maybe, maybe not. But I will say Ballard did say this is a deep tight end class, which it's not, but that doesn't matter. What matters is he believes that. And so he said, look, George Kittle's taken in the 4th, Travis Kelce in the 3rd, and he just rattled off 3 or 4, Hall of Famers basically who were taken outside the first round of the draft. So it might not be Warren, it might be someone else, but here's the thing, Pat, we might finally get a Colts tight end who runs 70 or 80% of the routes in the offense, which is something we haven't seen for 25 years.
Yeah, their 4 to 5 man rotation at tight end could finally be coming to an end where, it's the late in the opening slate on a Sunday, things are kind of trending your direction. You just need anyone in Indianapolis to score, except for the 4th string tight end who just scored that you didn't know was on the team.
Do you know, the people out there don't understand the blurbing torture of having a 3 or 4 man tight end rotation, and you have to get all those guys.
It is true torture. By the way, speaking of the tight end class, Kyle Dvorak and I talked about it a lot for some reason with Eric Froton in our Monday Q&A, draft Q&A, if you want to check that out on YouTube. Someone asked him if there was a tight end 3 after Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland. We talked a lot about the scam player H-back Harold Fannin, as one is known to do. And so check out the check out the scam. Check out the draft talk on our YouTube chat with myself and Eric Froton and Kyle Dvorak. Those are 2 guys who are going to be drafted. George Pickens was someone who was drafted, Denny, several years ago, but talk about someone who might not even want to be around his team anymore. George Pickens has to deal with the arrival of DK Metcalf, who kind of everything George Pickens does, DK just does a little bit better. ESPN's Adam Schefter believes Pickens could be, quote, deemed expendable in a draft day trade. Is this something in a vacuum? Do we want Pickens to be traded because we don't want him fighting for targets with DK Metcalf? Or is Pickens kind of always like the grass isn't always greener type of player, and that, it's such like a narrow skill set? This is a team that already knows how to use him. Would you say, just for straight up fantasy points reasons, do we want Pickens on the Steelers in 2025, or do we want option B without knowing what option B is?
Give me option B, C, Q, whatever. Just give me something else. It's going to be better. It's whatever is behind door number 2 or 5 or 9 is better than door number 1, which is the Steelers. Because, you have an Arthur Smith offense, okay? Just the destroyer of wide receiver fantasy production. You have Mason Rudolph at quarterback at the moment. Okay. Now who knows? Who knows? Brett Favre could be under center for the Steelers come week 1. And also that would free up DK Metcalf to, see a 28-30% target share perhaps, which sounds great. It actually won't be that great because 30% target share sometimes is going to be 8 targets in this offense. So I do think Pickens is going to be better just somewhere else. But there is, there are the factors, the emotional factors that Pickens has. Does that fit with every team? It's hard to say.
I do just wonder if Pickens is the kind of player where any team basically he could be the kind of player where if a team trades for him, it's a red flag. It's kind of like what kind of team would be trading for George Pickens at this point? Not that he's not good, but just like all the baggage. And like I said, kind of a one-dimensional skill set. And like if a good team trades for him, it's probably to make him like a role player. Where if it's a bad team trades for him, it might be like miscast as the number one. And I feel like he could be a grass is always greener, and that maybe there just is no true great situation for George Pickens.
So on a bad team with a weak head coach, he will eat them alive.
Yes.
In the locker room, and actually probably won't even last wherever if he lands on like the I don't know. I'm thinking like the Titans or just a team that doesn't really have a head coach that's really in charge.
Dallas
Cowboys. He lands on the Cowboys. He's gonna be the head coach by week 4.
The coach. Yeah, that would be sweet actually.
Yeah, no, I mean, so that's bad. If he lands with a contender who has a strong head coach, I don't know, someone like Mike Tomlin, it could work out. But I mean, there are so many factors with this guy because, as we saw as recently as last season, when he doesn't get the ball, he loses interest, and that's not going to play with a lot of the league.
George Pickens to the Washington Commanders? Question mark.
Maybe.
Has anyone thought about them? Many are saying.
Let's get that trending.
Let's get it trending. I just saw the Commanders. I saw the Cowboys. If it's someone like the Panthers, it's like, all right, I'm out. I'm moving on for good. Even though Dave Canales is a good coach.
Someone like no. The Niners could work. I think the Niners could work.
The Niners could. No, Kyle Shanahan is never. Kyle Shanahan wants receivers to do like it's a 10-point plan every route. Like if you deviate at all, he immediately benches you for Demarcus Robinson. So that would never ever work. Maybe the Cleveland Browns in the division.
No.
Help? Yeah, I guess not.
Yeah. Also, Pickens. Come on, man. For your own career's sake, get in a dome. Just go to a team with a dome. Stop playing in terrible weather 4 months a year.
We're about to welcome in Mr. Drew Dinsick, who's already sitting backstage, but we're going to make him sit through one more topic before we do that. And that topic is, of course, Jameson Williams. So I feel like we talk about a lot for how good he actually is. And he's not bad. He's good enough to talk about, but I don't know if he's good enough to talk about several times in offseason like we do. But George Pickens rumored could potentially be on the move. Same deal for Jameson Williams. SI's Albert Beer reports some in NFL circles believe JMO, as we call him, could be traded. I feel like the Lions should. Jameson Williams to me just screams like the ultimate sell high, whether it's fantasy, whether it's real life. Like that was pretty cool. That happened. Every single person knows it's not happening again. Really? Yeah. I mean, again, he's going for the Yahtzee of suspensions. Like every time he scores a touchdown, he also draws a penalty. Like I don't know. It feels like the ultimate sell high to me on Jameson Williams. But do you agree? Do you think last year was JMO's peak? Was the question I posed to you in our show sheet.
I mean, statistically, like if this was just like a computer simulation and a player couldn't get suspended every time he scores a touchdown, like Jameson Williams, then yeah, I think that he could get better. He could actually get better, especially if this Lions team has to throw more. We saw near the end of last season as the Detroit defense totally collapsed. You had Jared Goff dropping back 45, 50 plus times. That was cool for everybody, including Jameson Williams, who, for the first time last year took on a full-time role, in this offense. Before he was only running 30, 40% of the routes, sometimes wouldn't play much in a given game. So I think he can get better, but you're right. I mean, there are factors outside the field, sometimes on the field, that make you wonder if he can keep it up.
He is, yes, so talented, so explosive. I mean, even after the ACL, even in a league full of athletic freaks, he kind of does seem a cut above.
Yeah.
And it was such a creative coaching staff getting him the ball last year. Ben Johnson, of course, is gone. I think Dan Campbell is creative in his own right. It just feels like, I feel like trading him would be smart for the Detroit Lions. And dynasty leagues, I have him in my main dynasty league. I should probably trade him. I won't because I'm scared and I never trade people. But
see,
I feel like
I feel like this would be a huge blow to the Lions offense. He brings an element that obviously, it goes without saying, they don't have that element if he's gone. Very few teams have that element. A guy with that kind of game-breaking speed who can get behind the defense at will. It's not like he just jogs and he's behind the defense. And we've joked about like, hey, that's the way to beat two safeties, the two high safety looks, right? Well, how do we do it? How do we do it? We get one fast guy, and that's Jameson Williams. So you lose him. Yeah, I think you're stuck with it. Just a ton of checkdowns, which for fantasy could work. For real life, not so much.
If they trade Jameson Williams coupled with the departure of Ben Johnson, I think you'd be looking at a team that's leading the league in rushing attempts, maybe in 2025, an entirely different offense that we witnessed in 2024. But you know what's going to be entirely different is our show when we come back after a short break right after this with Mr. Drew Dinsick. We are in the middle of NFL draft week, which means a marathon of news, mock drafts, rankings, player interviews, and more on the NBC Sports Now channel. Tune in all week beginning at 7 a.m. Eastern, for PFT Live, The Dan Patrick Show, Chris Sims Unbuttoned, and Fantasy Football Happy Hour for the latest news, insights, and rumors surrounding the draft. For more details, visit NBCSports.com/now. It is now our distinct pleasure to be joined by our colleague, but more importantly, friend, Mr. Drew Dinsick. You may know him as a handicapper and a seismologist, a scholar of the New Orleans Pelicans schedule. He was breaking it down for me one night in an Uber for a while, how insane their schedule was, and I did not realize how insane it was. It was really, really crazy. But Drew's going to be here to talk us through the NFL draft from a betting perspective. But Drew, first off, how are you doing? Welcome back. I haven't talked to you for a few minutes.
I'm doing great. It's great to see you guys. As always, I know this is a football show, but I'm on cloud nine after that Kawhi throwback performance last night. It makes you feel young again, you know?
I know.
Yeah, that was pre-pandemic Kawhi.
Like, it was. I know.
It's been a while. So that was a ton of fun, and it's the draft this year. At least right now, looking for some juice, looking for something to get.
Such a boring draft is what you're saying. Nothing. It feels like all chalk this year. No trades. Everyone's just swallowing chalk after chalk after chalk.
I wanted to quickly just tell the folks out there that Drew helped us find some of the best dining in New Orleans when we were there for the Super Bowl. I haven't stopped thinking about it. I want to thank Drew, and I told my wife about it, and she got mad because she said, "You don't even like food. You don't even what you enjoyed Drew's innate knowledge of the New Orleans, cuisine area, and you don't even like it." So anyway, Drew, I'm gonna need some notes if I ever take my family down there. We can get some turtle soup.
Drew, hopefully, by the way, you have started planning for Santa Clara. That's all I can say. I believe that you had. I think we had already talked about this at the end of our Super Bowl week together.
I got bad news for you guys. I'm going to be in Italy. The Winter Olympics going on concurrently with the Super Bowl next year.
I'm devastated.
Is that on NBC's dime or your own?
On my own. Yes, I'll be in Cortina d'Ampezzo. I got my tickets for the skiing, the women's skiing.
Italy doesn't have any good food.
So what this means, guys, is that Pat and I will be eating at the Wendy's drive-thru.
I know. Yeah, well, not having a single good meal at the Super Bowl next year. That's
we will have an Arby's meat mountain together.
Silicon Valley's best.
Yeah. Before we get into the NFL stuff, real quick, I just wanted to ask you about. I had a take at the beginning of the show about Jalen Brunson being a foul merchant, right? Just a guy who just jumps in the guy, and draws a foul. Am I off base there? Am I completely off base, or am I onto something?
Playoff basketball, Brunson, it does feel that way.
Okay.
But the reality is what he's playing the percentages like Steph Curry is shooting the three, right? Like he's so good at the continuation, getting that shot to fall, that like he's absolutely inclined to try to go seek contact, to try to run into that forest of bigger bodies, and get the bump, get the basket, get the free throw. Like that's his game, I can't fault him for it. Like you can't fault Steph Curry for shooting threes. When you're that good at it, you do what pays the bills.
I will say, I feel like unlike James Harden too, like he actually does take punishment when he does it.
Sure.
Whereas Harden would just like bump into someone and immediately demand 3 free throws. Whereas Brunson, I don't know if Brunson needed to go flying across the entire key there, and shatter his elbow.
I do want to say, look, Brunson's a dog. I think limited. He's skill wise, he's probably limited, right? But he does what he can, and I'm very happy for him very happy for the Knicks fans who
Yeah.
love him. But wow, I hated watching him last night. And
You meant his dog level's off the charts, and yet you hate watching him. Very, very curious. Drew, so we'll start with an at-large philosophical question.
Yeah.
You were hinting, this year's draft is boring. You're talking about how NBA players are just playing the percentages on everything. It's kind of just everyone playing the percentages, and like we're removing variables. Like teams aren't behaving crazily anymore. All 32 teams have their first round pick as of this taping. And so how has draft betting changed over the years? How do you break down what actually moves the needle for you, by the way, in terms of pre-draft reports? So just how has it changed? What actually moves the needle for you? Is there's just too much chalk in all aspects of American sporting life now?
So the reason that this year's draft is lacking a little juice is because the liquidity, which is to say the amount of money you can get a bet on something you think that the market is a little bit behind on, has evaporated. If we go back to like 2020 during the pandemic, when the only thing going on in the world of sports was the NFL draft, like that was the golden age. Honestly, like everyone out there was like, I'll take a bet. What do you got? Who wants a draft bet? Right? Like it was a free for all. And it's kind of slowly waned. We had a couple of cycles where the books kind of took it on the chin. The Trayvon Walker pick was a surprise to them for the Jags. This is a good example. And then bang, right on the heels of that, Paolo Banchero was a surprise to them for the Magic. And so that kind of got everybody a little gun shy. Like, we'll open the props a little later this year. We're only going to take $100 this year, right? Like that's kind of been sort of the overall arching kind of theme and trend of draft betting, where like it still drives a million clicks. So like this is still like just content city. But the gambling side of it has gotten very, very tough to really get, sincere bets down. Like 1 week ago, there were markets open where you could get a decent sized bet. You could get rebets, you could build a position that mattered, right? Like you'll have some skin in the game, right? Like, I guess here's a good example. Like on a Tuesday of an NFL week, you have an opinion about a game on Sunday. 1 click, you can bet $10,000. You have an opinion about a draft that's happening in a week. You really strong opinion. 1 click, you can get $1,000, right? So it just in terms of, kind of coming up with an equivalent sort of betting market, it's tough. And the other thing that happens is because it's an information game, there's not a lot of like, oh, I have an opinion that the Commanders should be favored by 3, and that's 2.5. And then someone else comes back and they're like, oh, no way. The Cowboys should certainly be a bet at 3, and you're getting two-way action in those types of markets. With the information, it's generally one way, right? Like somebody hangs a market and they're like, yeah, we think Travis Hunter is going to go at second. What price should we make him? I don't know, minus 200.
Sure.
Click. It's like, oh, minus 500 now. Oh, now it's minus that. Like, you've taken 10 bets on one thing and they're all the same bet. And it's just like, great. Like we've just built a negative position for our book. That was not a worthwhile exercise for us. Let's do it again with Abdul Carter at 3rd. Let's do it again with Will Campbell at 4th, right? Like, so far, everything that's been opened has seen like just one-way betting, and that's a little bit different than it used to be. There wasn't quite as many people grinding this back in the day,
right?
And there were certainly the gamification of the draft and your mock draft and getting things right and really kind of trying to really fuel the prediction space has sharpened a great deal. And for those reasons, any mark that gets open that's wrong gets corrected quickly. Little bit of skin in the game for those who were first to it, and then poof, it's gone.
I've been in this game a while, and the sophistication of everything has increased, obviously, especially over the past decade. But I don't think anything more so, like you were saying, Drew, than NFL draft analysis. Like it's to call it a cottage industry is insulting. It is an industry. It is. You have 5,000 people who spend 6 months doing nothing but grinding the edges of the NFL draft. So you get to this point, and it's like, you have experts everywhere, whereas that wasn't the case as recently as like 5, 6, 7 years ago. It's changed completely.
In mock drafts, they don't even try to get clicks anymore. They just try to be right. which is really
Yeah.
annoying. Like no one does like any outrageous takes anymore in the mocks. They all want to do well in these contests. And like, so you don't even get fun mock drafts anymore, except for, of course, all the mock
like
drafts.
if you put out two competing pieces of content from the same producer or the same quality, and one of them was like, let's do what we think teams should do versus like, what is the intelligence that you have right now, right?
Yeah.
The intelligence one is going to get poured over, transcribed, screenshot, cut up, posted on social media everywhere. The what would you do is going to fall on deaf ears.
Speaking of that, like what actually does move the needle for you, by the way? Like what do you even consider valid intel anymore? Is there any valid public intel anymore? Like if someone like Daniel Jeremiah or like Lance Zierlein or like an insider like Albert Breer, Tom Pelissero.
Yeah.
Is there even any value in that information anymore, or does it have to be more like kind of off?
Yeah. I'm just locked in with tweet alerts from Pretty Ricky and no, I'm just kidding. the kind of the dog tweeter is important to follow. Yeah. But no, in seriousness, there's been a pretty aggressive turnover in terms of what I would consider valid sourcing for draft information over the last handful of years. Like, and I guess, and I hate to, I don't even mean to call anyone out specifically, but I will. Somebody like Daniel Jeremiah, as is probably your quintessential like arc of a draft expert, right? Like he was working with teams. He had bona fide contacts. He was getting like real intelligence, and you knew that it was going to be Baltimore, the New York Jets, the LA Chargers. Like you knew exactly which teams to really look closely on who he was projecting. Well, the Jets have turned over. The Chargers have turned over, right? And Jeremiah himself, for what it's worth, he's still creating amazing content, but it's pretty clear he's being like NFL gentrified a little bit, where he's not inclined to spoil it for everyone. He's trying to kind of keep things interesting for the people to tune into the draft on Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern, right? Like that's sort of the company line that I'm getting from him now. So, I would say like, whereas when he had said things, did things, moved players on his board, even, you were just like, okay, this is because of he's getting real-time feedback from people who matter, and, we should be listening. And now it kind of just feels like, going through the motions a little bit, and he's got more of his preference in it as far as instead of just like what he's hearing from teams and things like that. So, I would say that like kind of validating sources and really kind of gleaning who you're getting useful information of changes aggressively. A guy like Pete Traeger used to be the plug for what the Rams and the Cardinals were going to do. I don't get the sense that he's got his finger on the pulse for either of those teams anymore. There's content that you hear that you immediately are like, nope, smells like smoke. And the best example I can give you is like, was it a coincidence that every major reporter was like hearing the Jags have interest in Jeanty on at 5?
I was saying this earlier in the show. Yes,
we were hearing Jack, and then by the afternoon it was like, I'm hearing it's Ted McMillan at 5, and then the next they have interest in an offensive lineman. We're hearing Banks. Like I have my clock set. Like we're gonna check the news after lunch today, and it's gonna be like they're kicking the tires on Warren, right? Like it's literally like one by one going through the guys who teams below them might have interest in, to kind of float that's the guy they're going for, in the hopes that they can get somebody to trade up to the 5. Because if you look at the Jaguars and you look at what they did in free agency, this defense is still an atrocity. It was the worst defense in football last year. They've done nothing to address that. If they don't take a defensive player with their top 10 pick, okay. Good luck, guys. And
also, is it? Okay, just as an aside on the Jags, is it not funny at this point that every year they're like, we got to help out our generational quarterback. Like he needs everything he can get, folks. Because folks, we got Alex Smith. That's what we got.
Yeah,
come on. I mean, we just need to like reset how we think about Trevor Lawrence. He is a guy who needs to be surrounded by extraordinary talent. Yeah. Or he just looks like he has looked. It's just normal, just average.
Yeah. And you put the most talented offense on the field. If you got to score 35 every game, your margin for error is nil. So You know, it seems pretty like I put some of draft handicapping is literally just putting all the pieces of the puzzle together and starting to connect them until you can tell it's going to be a horse. And then sometimes it's literally just like, this is fishy. That's funny timing. Well, that's funny timing. That's
the
funny
Jeanty
timing.
thing was
Like,
so
why would
transparent.
they be doing this? And it's like, if you kind of suspend disbelief and you're like, what if the Jags are just going to take Mason Graham at 5 if they can't muster up a trade? Or if they do get a trade, then guess what? We get the uninspiring, not super fun, not fan, get the fans worked up defensive tackle at a better price, like 9 or 10, right? Like that's kind of what all of this looks like and seems like to me. Now, if they go out and take Jeanty 5, then that
you're
to me.
ruined.
I'm certainly not ruined, but that tells me that they may have worked out a deal for Etienne, and Etienne's going to be a Cowboy or something like that, right? Like that's kind of the part B of this, which is I would assume that with the Jags having a little bit of a pivot pick at 5, they're probably aggressively trying to see if they can move some players like Travis.
So the Jags creating a lot of noise this week. No one has created more noise in the entire pre-draft process than Shedeur Sanders, where the people were trying to will him first into the top 3. Now they've kind of moved on to maybe the top 10. But, now the rumors smoke. He might not even go in the top 32. Books, I feel like. So what is his over-under line that you're seeing? Do you think he's more likely to go in the top 10 or fall out of the first round altogether? Because what is the lay of the Shedeur Sanders land for a plugged-in information aficionado such as yourself?
So between those two options, he's more likely to fall out of the round 1 altogether. The first over/under that they hung for him was 3.5. That was a bad opener.
Yeah, it was a bad opener.
It got blasted over. The second one I saw was 8.5. That got blasted over. There was one day last week where that was up, and the Giants brought Shedeur in for a workout, and everybody's like, "Oh, they might have interest at 3 again," and it was like, "No, they're doing their due diligence for their round 2 pick, obviously."
Yeah, so Schefter blew that up.
Yeah.
And Giants beat writers who were salty, and you can't blame them, were like, "Hey, by the way, this was always the intent. Like this was always the plan. They don't have sudden renewed interest in Sanders. Like this is just they were going to do this no matter what."
Because you know what? After you figure out what you're going to do at 3, you start to figure out what are you going to do at 34.
Right. Yeah.
and guess what? Sanders is probably going to be there. And actually, like if you had asked me yesterday, I would have said like, Browns 33 makes sense. Maybe they flip flop with the Eagles in 32 and get a 5th-year option potentially on him. Like that makes sense. Right now, the temperature on him is ice cold. Like, I can't even find a team at the top of round 2 that has sincere interest in him. So
you're talking about for the 4th quarterback off the board right now.
It's very possible he is the 4th quarterback off the board.
Yeah. Wait, who's the 3rd? If it's Dart and Ward,
your guy Shuck.
No.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I would eat
Milrose. Milrose an option for a lot of teams as well.
Yeah,
like,
Milrose. It's Milrose. Yeah, not Shuck. I was like, I know there's someone out there. Yeah, it's Milrose.
Denny's not wrong.
He's wrong. Shuck's going in the 4th round.
There was a violent rumor about an hour ago that he's going to go higher than you think.
There's a chance Shuck goes in the top 10.
Stop. I will truly eat my shoes.
He'll go in the top 10 of round 2 for sure.
If he's lucky.
The Giants are talking themselves into it. They're like, man, this guy looks like a quarterback. You never know.
No, Shuck is this year's PSYOP. So interesting. Drew thinks Shedeur more likely to go in round 2. I mean, he's not going in the top 10. So by definition, he's more likely to go.
Feed it to the fire right now. Shedeur Sanders' most likely landing spot is a team that already has a quarterback that is willing to take him on as a project as a backup, like the Rams or something. Like honestly,
a good outcome for him.
It's a good outcome, and it's one he's going to be pissed about, and Dad's going to be pissed about too.
They would not be upset. He would engineer the coach's firing. We're going to engineer a short break. We'll be right back after this. The first major of the LPGA Tour tees off later this week. Watch the brightest names compete in Texas at the Chevron Championship on NBC Golf Channel and streaming on Peacock. Drew, I'm sure you're betting on the Chevron Championship. Although I've never actually heard you talk about LPGA betting before, but I know you just bet on almost everything.
Yeah, and I don't have my sharp information yet, though, so I don't have the tips for you.
Yeah,
I'll get it. Yeah, I'm expecting it in about a couple hours. I'll get
you don't have the info yet. That's because you're grinding the draft.
Get the early mail.
And one thing you're grinding is the over/under on running backs in the first round, where we appear to be totally guaranteed to have 2 first-round running backs. Where like even if Amari and Hampton falls, it seems like we'll go in the 20 to 32 range. It looks like we have 2 first-round running backs. The real question, Drew, is do we have 3? The over/under on 2.5 running backs in the first round of this NFL draft.
Yeah, so this one's really fun to handicap, honestly, because there are 2 really important moving parts here. In a macro sense, my read on this draft is that round 1 is going to be very, very trench heavy. A lot of offensive linemen, a lot of defensive linemen in pick 4 to 32. Because there's just generally high floors on those guys where you're thinking you're getting, an 8-year player. The running back pool, then intuitively, you would think the market might be a little soft. This is a deep class. There's a lot of day 2 talent. And in general, compensation for a running back, if you start them on a day 2 contract, your second contract potentially is more favorable. So just in general, like the arc of when you take a running back is kind of pointing at day 2. The guys who are on the bubble for day 1 and day 2 are also all kind of about the same, right? Like you can't really convince me that there's this massive delta between RB2 and Hampton and RB5. Like they all have different things that they do that are better than the other one, but I don't know that any of these guys are fortunate. None of these guys are moving the needle really in terms of championship probability. They're just kind of fortifying either a weakness, plugging a hole in a weakness or fortifying a strength. And then the last kind of moving part that makes this fun is that I think a lot of teams are trying to move away from their current running back.
Yeah,
there's a whiff of running back musical chairs afoot.
Okay.
If you kind of get what I'm getting at, just completely out of the blue, like, do we wake up and James Cook has a new home and the Bills take a running back 30? Very possible, right? Do you wake up and there's at least 5 teams that I think have a realistic potential to musical chairs their running backs, and if those
Ramondre Stevenson, maybe
Ramondre Stevenson's a great one.
The Titans could trade a running back. They have these duplicative talents for no reason.
Yes, that's true.
Yep. There's a very deep pool of running backs that could find new homes on draft day who are currently employed, and that opens up spots for running backs to be drafted. At price is everything in this one, and I think the current price in that is about over 2.5 is about plus 220, under it is minus 300. That's very close to fair for me. If there's a third, it's late, and you're almost better off at that point, just like pointing specifically at player team markets, right? Like position of a player drafted by the Buffalo Bills as a running back is humongous number, 38-1, right? Like if 3 running backs are going in round 1, like one of them is probably going to the Bills. Like it kind of just feels like that's the way that these dots connect. So I'm inclined more on trying to identify specific situations like that to swing at them taking a running back than I would take an over 2.5. But there's absolutely runway for 3 to go. And I think between round 1 and round 2, we're talking about 5 or 6.
Under sounds like the play. And real quick, if Jeanty doesn't go to the Raiders, you heard it here first. One of these Seahawks running backs is going to go to Las Vegas. Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet.
You can put that in pen. Charbonnet, welcome to the Las Vegas.
Yeah. Wow, he'll look good in silver and black. Wanted to ask you quickly here about wide receivers in the first round. With the over under set at, if it's set at 2.5 receivers in the first round, Drew, are you confident with the over there, or are you going with the under?
I'm going to go with the over. And it's only because of the number. If it was 3.5, I would be saying this is very likely an under. I think this number is a square flat 3.
Okay.
The wide receiver market in general is fun. I mentioned before how most of these information markets, they move one way, which is not that fun. Even if you don't have skin in the game, I'm always intrigued watching the board and seeing the ones that go back and forth much more than I am seeing the ones that run away. And the first wide receiver one has been sort of the one market where there's been a little bit of a war ongoing in the sharp community. Some people very sure that it is Tet. Some people very inclined to take swings on McMillan and even Ibuka. I'm sorry, and Golden and Ibuka. So that one has been fun to watch. And is I tuned into don't ask me why. Actually, no, you know why. I tuned into the Dallas presser not long before we recorded, just because I wanted to hear from Jerry Jones himself, and it felt a little like elder abuse trotting him out there to do these at this point. It was a bit meandering of a press conference. And it kind of made me think that this, number one, they're very non-committal and unsure as to which of the 2 wide receivers they ultimately prefer. Their draft board still in progress, but it's coming along great. And I think honestly, it'll be however he wakes up on Thursday morning, like, let's go get the big guy or let's go get the fast guy, right? Like that's kind of the way that's going to go, which is why it's fun watching that price bounce all the way, bounce all around right now. McMillan, a healthy favorite to go first. I think the 12th pick will be your first wide receiver off the board. I think it's very low likelihood that anyone ahead of him, anyone ahead of the Cowboys gets to makes that pick. And I would lean Golden just because I feel like the speed is more complementary. But I have an under 29.5 on Ibuka. I really, really would love to see him go in the mid 20s, so that's not a sweat, because I think he will. Juicy price. He seems to be, to me at least, he seems to be sort of the ideal fit for a lot of these playoff contending teams that need a plug and play guy on day one. And his polish and his his interview being so exceptional across every single account I've heard makes me think that there's going to be a blue chip playoff team that takes him and he's ready to go. So he would be the guy to watch, surely, but I think the other 2 guys do get picked in the teens.
If I had a choice between Tet or the field as the first wide receiver off the board, I think I would take the field, just because McMillan, for a guy who's been kind of like the consensus wide receiver one, is just, I'd say it's like the most underwhelming consensus wide receiver one I've ever seen.
I agree.
Not that he's bad, but just like usually the wide receiver one's a little more no doubt of a star than this. And Ted is not striking me as a no doubt star.
There hasn't been much chatter, right? It's just like McMillan's number 1, I guess. Whatever. Let's move on to the other guys.
That is like no one even wants to talk about him. Yeah,
right. It's like, wait, whatever. Wait, no, like, can we get into like, is he or isn't he the number 1 guy off the board among receivers? I did want to ask you. So Travis Hunter not counting as a receiver.
Right. That's right. Okay. Yes, that's right. No, that's right. Yeah, every market at this point that's doing first wide receiver has pulled Hunter out of the pool. There's a defensive lineman market that pulled Carter out of the pool. They've really gone out of their way to make some fun betting markets with some chaos, and those are the ones that are interesting because, again, like, if you feel like it's 50-50 that Tet goes, then, right now he's minus 200, minus 209. In faraway places that'll take big bets. So there's opportunities to go against him. It's just a matter of if hopefully Jerry wakes up on Thursday and he's feeling the need for speed.
If I knew how to do such a thing, I would bet against him, but I have no idea how to actually do that. Producer Adam points out, by the way, Ibuka is a very good blocker, which could play in his favor. But Drew, take us home with this one. What is your favorite bet on the board heading into the 2025 NFL Draft on Thursday, April 24th in Green Bay, Wisconsin?
I'm going to give you a little bit of juicier one. And this is a player that I have the most staked on to go under his draft position. It is Kelvin Banks. To me, he is the most he's kind of fits the most archetypal left tackle spot. There are issues with both of the tackles that people put ahead of him, and I'm not exactly sure why he is ahead of them. in a lot of sort of the consensus big boarding space. I've heard from teams that I think, have a solid enough read on Banks that he is their OT1 ahead of Campbell and Membu. So Banks to me, I think is going to go surprisingly high. I bet a lot of his under 13.5, that price has completely gotten away. So I wouldn't go there. But top 10 or plus 250 looks pretty good to me for Banks. A lot of potential landing spots. There's a home for him in Jacksonville if they feel like it, in Vegas if they feel like it. At the Jets at 7, there's been a lot of dots connected between Banks and the Jets. And then I doubt he's a Carolina Panther, but Saints and the Bears make sense too. So I got 5 potential outs for Banks in the top 10, and that was available at plus 250 last time I looked.
He's young. He was a year 1 left tackle. It does strike me as maybe a better bet than the other 2 tackles. No offense to my Mizzou guy, the right tackle. I feel like I never even heard his name, which I guess means he was good because he wasn't blocking. He wasn't missing his assignments. But I was very shocked when I found out he was a consensus top 10 pick. I was like, oh, all right, I guess that makes sense.
Look, as a fantasy guy, I'm in on whatever Drew's saying about left tackles. Whatever. Drew. Yep, that's right. I agree wholeheartedly with whatever you just said.
Drew knows tackles. He knows the draft. He knows the NBA. He apparently knows skiing. I know that he knew San Francisco cuisine. Absolutely devastated he will not be there, but I'm overjoyed they took the time to join us today. So Drew, thank you so much for taking the time to join Mr. Denny Carter and I. And audience, thank you so much for taking time to join us. We'll be back with you Friday morning, recapping round 1 of the draft and recapping everything as it happens live on Rotoworld.com. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back later this week.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and Rotoworld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Rotoworld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.